ஹையரிங்கில் கம்பிட்டன்சி ரொம்ப இம்பார்ட்டண்ட்டா, ஆட்டிடியூட் ரொம்ப இம்பார்ட்டண்ட்டா?
You've got a competent person. Then the next level of filtering, if you're lucky enough to get enough competent people.
ரெக்ரூட் பண்ணுற பீப்புளையோ ஆர் ஃபவுண்டர்ஸையோ மேனேஜர்ஸையோ பெரிய ஆளாக பார்க்கக்கூடாது. You have every toolkit,
everything there. Okay, so they fit in easily.
Hi Mohan, very glad to have you here. இந்த டிஸ்கஷன் நிறைய பேருக்கு ரொம்ப ஹெல்ப்ஃபுல்லாக இருக்கும். எஸ்பெஷலி பிஸ்னஸ் ரன் பண்ணக்கூடிய பிஸ்னஸ் ஓனர்ஸ், எஸ்பெஷலி டெக் பிஸ்னஸ் பண்ணுறவங்க, காலேஜ் ஸ்டூடெண்ட்ஸ், இன்ஜினியரிங் கிராஜுவேட்ஸ் ஆர் எக்ஸ்பீரியன்ஸ் பர்சன்ஸ் எல்லாருக்குமே ரொம்ப ரொம்ப ஹெல்ப்ஃபுல்லாக இருக்கக்கூடிய ஒரு செஷனாக நான் பார்க்குறேன். ஐ வாண்ட் டு ஸ்டார்ட் வித் உங்களோட ஃபஸ்ட்டு ஜாப் எக்ஸ்பீரியன்ஸ். இந்தியாவிலேருந்து நீங்கள் படித்து முடிச்சுட்டு யூஎஸ் போய் ஜாப் போகிறீங்க. இட் இஸ் நாட் 2000 ஆர் 2010. இட் வாஸ் ப்ரியர் டு தட். எக்ஸ்போஷர் பெருசாக இருந்திருக்காது. அதில் உங்களுக்கு இருந்த சேலஞ்சஸ் பற்றி சொல்ல முடியுமா?
I landed in the US as a student. I had completed my undergrad degree in what used to be called REC Trichy. I majored in electronics and communication. There was no computer science at that time. I went to do a master's degree. Again, computer science was very fledgling. This year was 1983. Okay, so they had a program which ran across multiple departments, electrical engineering and mathematics and all of that. In that thing, it was they labeled it as computer engineering, right? It was all kinds of things. You could just take math course and get the degree. You could take electrical courses and get a degree. And then there were all these math teachers who were retraining to be computer scientists, right? So it was really very early days, right? So I did 2 years out in grad school, okay? After that, I went for a job. So the first problem that many people may have had at that time, which is cultural acclimatization, that was not a big issue. Okay. The issue was starting a job. So I made a few choices, which I don't know whether they're the right choices or not. I picked a job in a small early stage company, okay, because of multiple reasons. One of them, to be very honest, was the smaller companies, you could really negotiate a quick green card process. Okay. You just paid for it yourself and a person signed all the paperwork. The other thing, of course, was that I wanted to do work which more responsibility at an early stage and all that. So I really started my job wire wrapping circuit boards. I don't know if anybody knows what wire wrapping is, but it is basically, before that's how you used to prototype boards in the 1980s, right? You basically put all the TTL chips and then you had a gun and you wire wrapped them and all of that, and then you tested the boards out. The first assignment my boss gave me, right, and he was ex-Navy guy. He didn't have any college degree. Okay, so he said, you wire wrap these boards and get them all working. And I basically I wire wrap boards and then I had to basically test them out on Oslo. It was really hard work, because the one thing that the Indian system, even though I had 2 years of US and the US was also all classes, is that you don't get to do a lot of things hands-on. I sucked at it. Luckily, there was nobody to write firmware, and I already knew assembly language programming at the time. And so I started writing firmware for hard drive controllers. Okay, that's really what I did, right? And we were interfacing 2 different types of hard drive controllers, and I had to dump all the code out of one hard drive controller and then change it to work with another. Right? There's some work which I did, and I learned how to debug a board. I learned a lot of things, but the struggle was I didn't have some of the skills which were not obvious to me, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, for example, I did not know whether a chip was working or not. Sometimes I had to troubleshoot chips, and in the real world you think it is 0, it's false, and it's 5 volts, it's true. The first learning I had was that is not the case. I mean, it is there's some variation here and there and all that. And there were a lot of learning, but eventually I think I found myself a safe place as a programmer writing assembly language code. For them also it worked out, right? So I worked there for a little while. That was my first job at at school, and it kind of began my journey towards becoming a programmer. To be very, very honest, that's what it was.
Okay. How many months did it take for you? Did it take you to get comfortable with the job?
Oh man, I don't know if I ever got comfortable. Okay, I was just basically doing stuff. I mean, in a way, it was good. I was learning all kinds of new things. Okay, I so the thing is that the nice thing about working in America is people are systematic, right? They don't start with the theoretical basis. At least this place, it was small. People were, you know, I remember the first day that the guy showed me how to wire wrap a board. I mean, he just fixed the chips on the board, and then so what you do is you have a gun, and then you basically tie up the legs of the chips, right? I mean, the metallic legs of the chip with a piece of metal. That's what wire wrapping is. That's how you hold it instead of soldering it or putting it in a breadboard, right? Okay, they do that. It's very interesting. So I just basically did that, and I took all day to do it. And a guy walked up and down twice, saying, "This long? You're taking this long? I can just do this in half an hour." I was a little nervous, but then it didn't matter. Half an hour, one day didn't matter. And then I had to test it out. So I learned a lot of things which was taught to me very systematically. I don't think that is the problem. But to get mastery, okay, and a lot of the skills have gone away now. I don't think anybody does that. Anyway, I don't do any hardware. I don't have to know TTL chips. So that's a very different ballgame. Yeah.
இந்த ஹார்ட்வேரில் நீங்கள் ஒர்க் பண்ணது ப்ரோக்ராமிங்க்கு நீங்கள் எப்படி அடாப்ட் பண்ணீங்க?
First of all, I don't think I'm going to call myself a hardware. I mean, I have a degree in electronics and communication. Then I did a bunch of, I told you the joint program, I did a bunch of programming courses. I think I did some VLSI design, all kinds of courses I did. I mean, whatever I could, right? The job I got, okay, even the guy who hired me probably thought he was hiring a software guy, okay? I thought I was going to get into hired as a software person. I then walk into the lab. There was this big lab, and the person who I was going to work for, his name was Neil Bergman, who had come out of the Navy. For him, all these things didn't make a difference. So you got an engineer with a college degree, right? He'd always rub it on me. And then he said, "Okay, do you know how to do this?" And I was too nervous to say I've never done this in my life. So I just sat down.
Wing it.
Huh?
Just manage it.
Yeah, so that's what I did. And then, I just gravitated towards software is a lot easier. I mean, at least today, I think you could do all of this. You can simulate a VLSI chip. I don't know what you can do now. I have not done it ever since that. That's the only job where I actually sat down and wire wrap boards. Okay. And by the end of the job, I was writing assembly language code. Debugging assembly language code that basically ran on a board itself had its own challenges, right? We had to write our own LED. My boss built me a LED debugger, okay, where I could single step through all the instructions and look at the lights. There were all kinds of...
Debugging system itself, you have to develop it.
No. The thing was that you basically are running bytes on the bus, right? So you don't need to know what comes, and all that. See, at the end of the day, when you write firmware, you basically are sending bytes. You're sending opcodes to a port somewhere, right? And then it reacts based on that. So you need to know how that whole thing flows, right? I mean, that's really what it is. I don't remember a lot of it, so if you ask me a lot of questions, then people who are listening to it will think I don't know what I'm talking about, right? I don't remember a lot of it, but I did all this work.
Okay. Next, you said you are one of the core team members who built the Norton antivirus system. Can you walk us through that experience?
So it's called, it looks very good on my resume today, right? Truth is, it was a very early, it was a small company, Peter Norton Computing, right? It was in Santa Monica. I have to first tell you about the office. It was in a place called 100 Wilshire, okay, where Wilshire Boulevard meets the Pacific Ocean, and my office overlooked the Pacific Ocean.
Okay.
Small company. The company did something called Norton Utilities, okay, and then they suddenly decided this is just one more utility to the Norton Utilities thing, okay.
Okay.
And as I said, it was providence to be there, they hired me as one more developer in one more utility team. I could have done Norton Disk Doctor. I could have done a whole bunch of things. New guy, new project, so they gave me this utility, right? So I worked with some fantastic people. One of the people that I worked with went on to become, Enrique Salem went on to become CEO of Symantec. My other fellow programmer is no more in this world, Keith Munt. I worked with, there were very few Indians in those days, but the other person that worked with alongside me was a guy called Manivandan. He was a co-developer with me. So we had, you can say we had two Tamils in a Northern Antivirus, early Northern Antivirus team. So it was 3, 4 maximum. The team went up to 5 people. They added a support person and a QA person and all of that. So it was a small team.
Small team.
Right? We worked extremely hard. Okay, so working hard was, we worked in insane amount of hours, right? I mean, all our waking hours we worked. Sometimes we didn't sleep because it was a small utility that had a lot of problems to be solved, right? I mean, you have to freeze the system when you get hit by a virus. You have to keep on every time a new virus came, you have to basically write a detection script and a repair script, right? You have to make it work. You have to integrate it into DOS and Windows. There was all these things. I don't know whether
Early days of PC computing.
Huh?
Early days of PC computing.
I won't say early days because this is 1991 already, right? 1990 or 1991, and early days would have been 85, right?
85.
I worked on even earlier stuff like CPM and all that. There's an operating system called CPM, pre-DOS. Okay. It was run by a company called Digital Research. Okay. And they were supposed to become the big guys, but Microsoft beat them and they became the operating system of choice. So we wrote a lot of this stuff. We worked very, very hard. We were running hard. What really happened is that that particular company, that particular quarter, Norton Antivirus sold so much that it carried the quarter.
Oh.
All of us got 110% of our base salary as bonus, the small team that we were, right? So we became famous, and but we all burnt out too. Okay, so
Weekends, nights.
Yeah, not weekends, nights. I mean, we felt like zombies. I mean, I used to smoke at the time, so I chain smoke and drink cups and cups of coffee and all of that. So the fact of the matter is that, I mean, because everybody knows what it is even today, then the product by its name, even though it's evolved so much, has lasted so long, right? It's outlasted Symantec, I think, and right?
Yeah.
It has outlasted Norton, it has outlasted Symantec, whatever it is. So it has lasted, it's given a long life of its own, and it's there to give me fame. But to be very honest, it's providence. I was there you're an employee, you're at the right place at the right time, okay? I like joining small companies, okay? Felt more comfortable in those spaces, okay? So I got rewarded. That's what I will say.
Okay. Curious on one aspect, because you are early into that product. Was it a separate product where you can get equity sort of thing? And the awareness the early days?
No, we had stock options.
Oh, you had
so
stock
I did make money out of that. Okay. Not a hell of a lot of money. Like, I made money, okay? You could probably put it for a down payment for a house or whatever. A little more than that. Was there awareness? We knew that we would get stock. I mean, I had worked in Ashton Tate before I went to Norton.
Okay.
Ashton Tate is a company that made DBase.
Oh,
I was
DBase.
part of the I was a developer of version 1 of DBase for Windows. Okay, I worked on DBase 4. I was in a product development team, right? So I had already worked. I'd worked in some of these marquee
Products.
Products, right? I don't know if people in this generation have ever heard of DBase, but
I am 2009, so I've heard of it.
Yeah, so DBase, Lotus, and
Lotus is from IBM, is it?
No. Lotus. There was a Lotus Development Corporation. There was Ashton Tate. Okay. Ashton Tate got taken over by Boland. Lotus Development Corporation got taken over by IBM. Okay. Excel 8 out Lotus. Okay. I mean, DBase died because eventually relational databases came to PCs and you went to client server and all that evolution, right? So So that's what happened. But the journey, the Norton antivirus journey was very, very intense. We worked very, very hard. Everybody was driven, everybody was aggressive. There were a lot of negatives about that. And, the reward is that I can talk about it now. Okay. But it was very difficult to last in that job. I mean, just
How many years were you there?
2 years.
2 years. And you use a word burnout. உங்களுக்கு அந்த burnout அப்படிங்கிற வேர்டு இருக்கிறது அப்போ தெரியுமா?
I burnt out, so I know. See, I'd wake up in the morning whenever I opened my eyes. Okay. Brush my teeth, have a shower, and drive to work. Okay. I lived in Santa Monica. The office was in Santa Monica. I started working. Okay. I'd go into work, fill up a cup of coffee. Okay. Go to the parking lot, light a cigarette, smoke a couple of cigarettes, go back and start working. Okay. And work, and then it's kind of it just went on, right? I mean, we were given free. We could order food from any neighboring place. You just had to call. Our boss had basically set up credit cards in about 5 or 6. Mostly we ordered pizza every day from Pizzeria Uno in Santa Monica, and then we'd eat the pizza, drink Coke, okay, smoke more cigarettes, drink more coffee, and work. Okay, so this is really how it was, and then things will happen. I mean, things happened very fast because we didn't have a way of. Every time we put a new virus signature in or whatever it is, we basically had to bundle it and put it up on, I think it was CompuServe or one of those things, for other people to download. The whole executive, right? That's when the whole idea of a virus definition file came into our heads, so that we don't have to ship this again, over and over again.
It keeps circulating.
Yeah. So that's what happened. And then the product was hard to test because you had to infect a machine.
Simulate that?
No, you had to infect. We had a red diskette made for us, which was a virus diskette, so nobody would use it. You'd put it in, you'll reboot with that, it'll get infected, and then you'll have this thing run. Right, so you had a virus lab where we had some couple of guys and who would sit down and disassemble the viruses and give us what they think is a signature. Then we wrote the script to add the signature. So there's all this stuff. Again, I told you all this has been a while ago, but I remember it because it was very intense time that I worked at.
Okay. நான் ஸ்கிரிப்ட்லேருந்து கொஞ்சம் விலகி ஒரே ஒரு கேள்வி கேட்கணும். லினக்ஸ்லேயோ மேக்லேயோ ஏன் இந்த நார்டன் ஆன்டிவைரஸ்க்கான ஸ்கோப் ஃபியூச்சரில் அது இல்லாமலே இருந்துச்சு?
See, I don't know the entire answer because there are other things that will attack. At the time that we built, okay, DOS had a very, very unique way of working. It operated in real mode. Okay, so the Intel processor had something called the real mode and a protected mode. Okay, the reason it's a protected mode is you couldn't come and damage things right away. It was basically abstracted out for you through segment tables and all of that. So, since DOS worked in real mode, the advantage of DOS is that you could modify the operating system at will. Right? Okay, you can put hooks to all the interrupts, change them, change their behavior. It was a very malleable and ductile system.
Okay.
Right? But you can't. The problem was that it also meant that it was vulnerable. Okay. Linux or Unix at that time, it's the same thing. Okay, you had what is kernel mode and user mode. I don't know if you're familiar with that. And it was very hard to penetrate. Mac had those protections. There were viruses on a Mac because we had a product called SAM, Semantic Antivirus for the Macintosh. Okay, so the answer is that it basically hit DOS machines more. Windows, after it went into protected mode, became more secure. Okay. And after that, you had different types of threats coming in, right? Now the class of threats are very, very different. Okay, I'm not qualified to talk about them, but I'm telling you what I did then, right? It's about the history of my computing life.
Yeah. NITல நீங்கள் படிக்கும்போது I think back then it was REC, right?
Yeah.
RECல ப்ரோக்ராமிங் நீங்கள் எப்படி ஃபஸ்ட்டு லேர்ன் பண்ணீங்க?
So I'll tell you one thing, right? when I studied in REC, there was one computer that BHEL had called ICL 2950,
ஓகே.
and there was a terminal. We had no access to it.
டெர்மினல் அப்படின்னா கொஞ்சம் டிஸ்கிரைப் பண்ண முடியுமா? பார்க்குறவங்களுக்கு வந்து டெர்மினல்னா
Well, I mean, I can describe it only if I saw it. I never saw it.
ஓகே.
Okay?
Okay.
I'm assuming that this is basically, but I've used terminals in other places. So it's basically something that is connected through a modem wires. Okay, you have a modem, you got a terminal. So it is very much like your keyboard and your terminal that talks to your computer, right? So except the computer was somewhere sitting in the big machine was sitting in BHEL, the ICL mainframe, and we could use it.
Okay.
That's what I assume it was. Okay, I think that so what happened is that we didn't really write any code. Okay,
ஓகே.
we had a class on Fortran where the teacher taught Fortran, we wrote exams and we passed. Okay, it was called computational methods. I think it was in the 4th year. I did a 5-year BE, by the way. I mean, for the younger people in your audience, it's 4 years now. I was one of the last but one batch of a 5-year BE integrated. You wrote terminal exams and you passed. That's what you did.
ஓகே.
And REC Trichy was affiliated to University of Madras.
ஓகே.
It was one of the only 8 engineering colleges in Tamil Nadu. So the thing that happened is I went on what is called as the industrial or practical training to a company called Hindustan Teleprinters Limited. And when I showed up there, okay, typically people went for practical training and did nothing. They just got a certificate. Okay, everybody thought that you go and show a certificate to somebody. It's just exposure of how an office looks. Okay, I was a little luckier or unluckier than that because I showed up there and there was a gentleman whose name is Lakshman Balraman, LB. Okay, he still lives in the city. Okay, and LB had returned from Michigan. Okay, LB was later on he was a son-in-law of the Hindu family.
Okay.
And he was an electronics engineer. I think he did his master's or PhD University of Michigan and all that. Very nice gentleman. So when we showed up as folks that were interns, me and I had another friend of mine, we went, okay, the guy called us into his room and he said that this is an SDK 85 kit and here is an Intel manual. You know, I want you guys to program this. So nobody in the company, they made teleprinters. I don't know if you know what teleprinters are. Teleprinters were basically an automated version of the telegraph.
ஓகே.
Okay, so you sent. So in a telegraph, you did this manually, right?
Yes.
Okay, teleprinter basically it would receive a telegram and then print it out. Okay,
For us.
there will be a modem in front of it. I mean, okay, they made teleprinters and they moved from mechanical teleprinters to electronic teleprinters and all that. So that is the interest. But these guys they were all, Intel was trying to sell. He got a SDK 85 kit. He gave it to me and my friend, and he said, both you guys have to figure out how to program this, and every day you report to me at the end of the day. So we sat down and we wrote, and this was really not assembler. The thing was basically machine language code. So you sat down and you wrote down on paper all the instructions, okay, based on the Intel manual, and then there were codes 3E, 0F, D3, 82, all of that stuff. I still remember some of it. Okay, so and the Intel processor had A, B, C, D, E, HL registers and all that. So we basically wrote all this code and basically we had our first programming experience with assembler in that place. Okay, we left it. LB made us work instead of playing table tennis and eating in the canteen, which my previous batch did. Okay, and so we went back to REC Trichy, and when our final year project came, me and Somshekhar Babu decided that we are going to do a microprocessor project. By the time the college had bought a Z80 kit. Z80 is the Zilog 80 processor,
Okay.
which has the same instruction set as an Intel 8085.
Okay.
Very much like what AMD and Intel are. So we created a project. We are the first people to create a microprocessor project out of REC Trichy. Everybody else was building some electronic system. We basically did this. So we had an element of programming. In fact, I was looking at my project report. There's all the code is in the back, right? And we got it to work and we demonstrated it to the examiner and all of that. So I knew programming. I knew assembly language programming. I landed up in the US, okay? And as Providence may have it, 2 years later, I got a job which still involved doing assembly language. I had become a systems guy. Okay. To tell you the truth, right, I did a lot of operating systems for a living. In the college in the US that I studied, I did fairly badly in the operating systems course because it involved knowing Pascal. I did not know any high level programming language. And in college, everybody programmed in Pascal. They had actually recommended that I take a Pascal programming course and data structures course before I take all these courses. These were grad school courses. But I was just worried that I'm going to be spending too much money on all this. I went on a teaching assistantship.
Oh,
Okay. So it paid only for 30 hours of tuition, right? The rest of it I'll have to figure out a way. So what I did is I learned it on the fly. I just took this course, right, which will satisfy all requirements. I didn't know how to program in Pascal. Truth is that, right? So I struggled and struggled and struggled. Okay, and I badly passed the course, to tell you the truth. But what happened is that I did that for the rest of my living. You know what I'm saying, right? And it was an interesting course. It's just that, unlike here, you don't write an exam and pass. You have to sit down. I screwed up the final project, right? I mean, we had to write all these simulations and where you filled in the gaps of the operating system, and not knowing Pascal really came and hit me badly. I mean, I learned Pascal. I learned about operating systems. So this is one thing, right? If you're a topper, you know everything clean. Sometimes you learn less than the way I learned it. Okay, I was that course, it would have been a disaster. I had to go and beg my teacher to give me an acceptable grade, to tell you the truth, because it was scary.
நாட்டான் பண்ணும்போது 3 மெம்பர் டீம் இருந்துச்சு.
3-5
அதில் ஒர்க் பண்ணீங்க. அப்புறம் நீங்கள் 50 மெம்பர் டீமில் ஒர்க் பண்ணிருப்பீங்க.
Yeah, I worked in larger teams as well.
Larger teams.
Yeah.
அப்புறம் நீங்கள் 50-100 மெம்பர் டீம் மேனேஜ் பண்ணியிருப்பீங்க. மேனேஜ் பண்ணிருப்பீங்க. இந்த டிஃப்ரெண்ட் வேஸ் ஆஃப் பீப்புள் ஒர்க் பண்ணும்போது என்னென்ன காமன் சேலஞ்சஸ் இருக்குது, எஸ்பெஷலி வித் ரிகார்ட்ஸ் டு டெக்னாலஜி ஒர்க் பண்ணும்போது?
நான் வந்து ஒரு விஷயம் சொல்கிறேன். ஓகே, when you begin a product, right, sometimes either because you don't have money or you don't have time, mostly because you don't have time, you have a very small number of people developing the product. Why I am using the word time இல்லைன்னு ஏன் சொல்கிறேன்னா, நம்ம வேலை பண்ண ஆரம்பித்தப்பறம் ஒருத்தனை இன்டர்வியூ பண்ணுறதுக்கு கூட நேரம் இருக்காது. ஓகே, அதனால் நம்ம என்ன பண்ணுவோம்னா நம்மளே வேலை பண்ணி முடிச்சிடுவோம். ஓகே, ஏன்னா நீங்கள் ஒரு 10 பேரை வந்து இன்டர்வியூ பண்ணிங்கன்னா அது 40 மணி நேரத்தில் வந்து அது 10 மணி நேரம் போய் சாப்பிட்ரும். இன்னும் வேல்யூ வேணும் இல்லை. அண்ட் முக்கால்வாசி பேர் வந்து நமக்கு வேலைக்கும் வரமாட்டாங்க. they will not come to work for us, right? So what you wind up doing is you build a product, right, and you have something ready. And I think this is what happens. Then people start consuming the product, right? Say see, the first thing that happens is you build a product, right, and you build a product for a market.
Okay.
The market consumes it. If the market doesn't consume it, you're dead on arrival. Okay. If it consumes it, then it starts telling you what it really wants as opposed to what you have built for it. Okay. Now, in order to basically build all those additional things, you start getting more people in. Right? You didn't intend for building something for the market. So it kind of takes all kinds of shapes, which is why product reaches a point where you have to re-engineer, because you have taken your base product and you are adding more and more stuff to it to somehow get it to work, because some sales guy will come and say that I have to sell this, and for this I need to do this, right? Okay, and so that is what happens. So that's how teams start growing, right? And they grow bigger and bigger and bigger, and so then you say that you've got all these pieces and you break them down and you have people managing these pieces, and all those things happen, right? That is, I think, how teams grow in size. Team வந்து இப்படி தான் grow ஆகும். They grow in size. Okay. So the challenges are, as your team grows bigger and bigger and bigger, you have to make sure that you maintain a certain quality of engineering in your teams. Okay, both in terms of people, process, keep the technology going and all of that, right? And it is hard. It's a hard problem. Okay, that's really what it is.
ப்ராடக்ட்டில் நிறைய ஃபீச்சர்ஸ் வரும், சேல்ஸ்லேருந்து ஒருத்தவங்க கொண்டு வராங்க. இந்த ப்ராடக்ட் ப்ளோட் இருக்குல்ல, ப்ளோட் பெருசாகிட்டே போகிறது, எக்ஸ்ட்ரா ஃபீச்சர்ஸ், அன்யூஸ்ட் ஃபீச்சர்ஸ், அதனால் வரக்கூடிய டெக்னிக்கல் டெப்ட்டு, யூ மேக் காம்ப்ரமைசஸ் டு பில்ட் சம்திங் அண்ட் தென் இட் நெவர் கெட்ஸ் யூஸ்ட். அண்ட் தென் டு மேனேஜ் தட், ஆன் டாப் ஆஃப் தட் யூ கீப் பில்டிங் ஃபீச்சர்ஸ் ஆன் டாப் ஆஃப் ஃபீச்சர். ஒரு ஃபவுண்டர் இந்த மாதிரி ப்ராடக்ட் மார்க்கெட் ஃபிட்டு அவங்க இன்னும் கரெக்டாக ரீச் பண்ணலை அப்படின்னு இருக்காங்க, ஒரு ஸ்டேஜில் இருக்காங்க. தே வில் ஹவ் ஸோ மச் ஆஃப் ஜங்க் இன் தேர் ப்ராடக்ட் அண்ட் சடன்லி தே ஹிட் ப்ராடக்ட் மார்க்கெட் ஃபிட். இப்போது அவங்களோட ஃபோக்கஸ் வந்து ப்ராடக்ட் மார்க்கெட் ஃபிட் கிடச்ச ஒரு ஃபீச்சர்ஸில் ஒர்க் பண்ணிட்டு இருப்பாங்க, அதே நேரத்தில் ப்ளோட்டும் இருக்கும். ஆக்சுவலாக இது ரெண்டையும் எப்படி அவங்க கேட்டகரைஸ் பண்ணி எதுக்கு பீப்புளை அலாட் பண்ணுவோம், எதுக்கு பண்ணக்கூடாது அப்படிங்கிற clarity, how do they arrive at it?
This is a very, very difficult question. Okay, you're asking me a very tough question, because if I give you an answer, you probably will think that I know how to solve this problem. Okay, this is the hard thing, right?
Okay.
So the reality of what happens is this, right? You build something. Okay, you will get. First of all, remember, the problem doesn't begin with technology. Right? As even if you have the best technology, if you're the product manager or the owner is often the product manager, comes back and says, build this for me. There's sales pressure, desire to generate revenue. I don't care what you do, just build it. Right? I mean, on that day, you can't talk logically with anybody. Nobody talks logic when they're under pressure. Right? So you'll build it. You'll keep on building this and that and everything else in the world. Okay? I mean, for example, there are like you got a payments product and you'll integrate it with 100 payment gateways when 90% of your transaction happen through 2 or 3. Just to give you an example, right? You'll build all of this, so it's all sitting there, right? Now, if you go and tell on that particular day that, hey, you know what, I see this pattern coming, so why don't I basically create this generic adapter and then I can have all of that. People don't. Then the next question is, it'll take 1 month more, but I've got to close the sale today, right? So business drives the decision. Now, this is where companies have to realize, when they hire product managers have 2 or 3 important roles. One of them is to ask the right questions to cut the noise out.
Oh, ask the right questions to cut the noise out.
Noise out. So you should not do something, right? I mean, because it is really not going to get value. How do you know that? You ask the sales guy, if he says that if I build this, I will get a big order, you have to ask him a few more questions, right? I mean, that communication that happens between the sales guy and the product guy, that determines whether I want to build this or not. Okay, because what is the impact of not building it? Okay, and if I build, see, sometimes you'll say, if the sales guy tells you, I'm going to bring you $1 million worth of sale, you build this. Okay, and he's sure about it, you build it. And if that sales falls through, that guy loses his credibility, right? The next time he will think about saying that, right? So that comes into play, to sit down and use the right filters to know what to build, to limit, and then within what you build, how do I limit the building of that so that it is useful, but I'm not boiling the ocean. Right? So these things, this is one of the roles that a product manager has.
Okay.
You get it, right?
Yeah, I get it.
I mean, this is the reactive role. There's a proactive role, which you, as a startup founder, you do. But let's not get there.
Okay.
But this is one of those things that you have to really think. In order to reduce bloat, you need to say no.
Okay.
And saying no is not easy.
Saying no is not easy. Very, 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 very true. You said product managers, they have to ask a lot of questions, learn to say no. இந்த ரெஸ்பான்சிபிலிட்டி ஒரு ஏர்லி டெவலப்மெண்ட் டீமில் ப்ராடக்ட் மேனேஜர் இருக்க மாட்டாங்க. வெரி வெரி ஏர்லி டேஸ் இந்த டெவலப்மெண்ட் ப்ராசஸ். அப்போ ஒரு இன்ஜினியர்ஸ் தானே அந்த ரெஸ்பான்சிபிலிட்டி இருக்குன்னு கேன் ஐ அஸ்யூம்?
No. See, you need an engineer with a lot of maturity to do that.
Okay.
See, don't dilute. You go and tell, ideally you go and walk up to an engineer. See, there's one guy, I interviewed a guy who used to work at Amazon, okay, about what he thought the role of a product manager should be. Okay, I learned from all these people, sometimes with conversation. So his idea of that was that you get a piece of work, right? You do all the running around for it as a product manager, all the way down to laying out the APIs and all that. So you're able to send stories to the engineering team where there is a lot of clarity in what they need to build, and you treat them as expert builders once you've given the spec, right? That is one way of looking at it. Now, Agile assumes that you shouldn't do that, so you go back and forth and back and forth, okay? But you still have to maintain boundaries. The product guy knows the market, right? Let the engineer feature it out. But what you want, you have to determine that, right?
Okay.
It's very, very important there. I mean, see, the thing is that one big problem is that eventually what happens to engineering things is they become victims of their own process.
Victims of their own process. Can you give more details on that?
No, I mean, it happens in many different ways. So, I don't want to generalize.
Okay.
But one way it happens is you produce your technology is not that great, or your technology is not built to basically do what it is doing now. It was meant for something else, and you never change it. You just add on top of it, right? So eventually, because the architecture is in such a way that 10 people cannot work on it together, okay, you start isolating the pieces out. You say you have all these rules and regulations, right? Then you throw managers in there. You have all these different pieces that are dependent on each other for it to become a product. So you hire project managers. Now project managers basically put their own rules in the process, and then you start using agile processes. Fantastic idea, right? Except that your agile process becomes a bureaucracy of its own. Okay, so all these things happen. Eventually, you have a very confused engineer sitting there, not knowing whether his manager is a manager or the project manager is his manager or some scrum master runs him. All that happens.
Basically, the ownership gets diluted. அப்படி வச்சுக்கலாமா?
That is true of everything. But I'm just saying, there's all these things. I mean, you go and look at the life in the day of. To me, an engineer should be in a stand-up meeting every day, and that's it. Okay. Now you go and deal with people, and they just go on and on and on, and so they're in some call or the other, resolving some issue or the other, right? And you add more and more and more of these people,
and then you get more people issues.
Yeah.
Okay. You use the word feature out. Product manager ஒரு ஒர்க் கொடுக்குறாங்கன்னா the engineer's role is to feature out அப்படின்னு சொல்றீங்களா? அதை கொஞ்சம் கிளியரா சொல்ல முடியுமா? ஒரு product
No, all I'm saying is that think of it as a product manager expressing a desire that something needs to be built, right? I mean, I'm not talking about the communication mechanism because, as I said, there are user stories and all that. No, I don't. It's too much of detail for me to get into what a user story is and all of that. But in the agile methodology, the engineer at some level goes beyond just coding to a spec, right? They figure out what needs to be built. They apply. They build, show, and then they modify, right?
Yes.
Okay. So the engineer does get some of the feature building responsibility. They're making some decision, right? It isn't completely specced out by the product manager.
Yes.
The product manager becomes responsible for delivering what they think the market needs. You get it, right?
Yes.
So how that communication happens between engineer and product manager varies from organization to organization.
ஹையரிங்கில் கம்பிட்டன்சி ரொம்ப இம்பார்ட்டண்ட்டா, ஆட்டிடியூட் ரொம்ப இம்பார்ட்டண்ட்டா?
I'm going to throw a question back at you, okay? When you hire a carpenter, okay, the most important thing that you look for is his ability to basically work with wood, right? To cut wood, to make things for you. Okay. If you got a carpenter who was very nice, who listened to everything you said, you showed up very early and worked till a dog at night, like crazily up to night, and then he produced stuff that you didn't want. It was not very good. What do you think will happen? I mean, there are two things happen, right? The person is very, very nice, so you don't want to say bad things to the guy, okay? And he doesn't have the skill, right? He doesn't have the skill, so it doesn't matter how hard he works, he won't be able to do it, right? Why it shouldn't be any different in programming.
Yes.
Okay, I'm not talking about some exec level job, okay, some middle manager exec, but if you are a engineer, the first thing is competency. Your ability to basically, in this case, write code that basically doesn't screw up somebody else's happiness, okay, and makes things work the proper way. So that is one thing, right? Now, once you have that going, right, you've got a competent person, then the next level of filtering, if you're lucky enough to get enough competent people, right, more than enough competent people, is to filter for attitude. Okay? If you basically put attitude first, you will get the carpenter that does not know how to work with wood. Okay? You will get a programmer, he'll be very nice, he'll show up, okay? He will come in the morning at 8, he will leave at 8, right? He will think that he's giving his all, right? But he's not going to give you what you want, right? From a perspective of business, from a perspective of quality, that will suffer. So attitude does not stand by itself. Okay, attitude stands over and above competency. Okay, if you've got a large number of competent people, then you use the attitude filter. Okay, but what happens a lot of times is that you don't get enough competent people. Right?
Yes.
Now there is a different case. You get a competent guy who doesn't want to work. Right? Or who basically is not going to listen to you. Okay? You won't even know that. Most of the time, you won't even know that. He'll show up, he'll clear all his programming interviews. Intelligent people know how to answer questions intelligently, right?
Yeah.
And then you basically realize he's not working out. You basically ask the person to leave or, whatever it is. So, attitude is required because you need to do for two reasons. One is that you had a good work ethic, which is considered attitude. The other is that you do not want to make other people's life difficult. That is also attitude. But for these two, if you have good work ethic and you know how to basically get along with other people and you don't know your job, okay, it's useless.
பிக் டெக்கில் ஒர்க் பண்ணக்கூடிய நிறைய இன்ஜினியர்ஸ்.
What is big tech first?
பிக் டெக்னா நான் சொல்கிறது ஃபேங் வச்சுக்கலாம்.
Okay, you're talking about companies of certain size. Okay.
Certain size. அங்கே ஒர்க் பண்ணக்கூடிய இன்ஜினியர்ஸ் தேர் வெரி ஹைலி ஸ்கில்ட். டிஎஸ் அல்காரிதம் எல்லாம் கிளியர் பண்ணி அவங்க வராங்க. வென் தே ஒர்க் இன் ஸ்மால் கம்பெனிஸ், ஒரு சின்ன கம்பெனியில் அவங்க வரும்போது அவங்களோட ஒர்க் எத்திக் வந்து இந்த ஸ்மால் கம்பெனிஸில் அப்சர்வ்ட் அண்ட் ஹேர்ட் ஃப்ரம் ஃபவுண்டர்ஸ் தட் அது இங்கே ஃபிட் ஆக மாட்டேங்குது அப்படின்னு சொல்லுவாங்க. இவங்க 10x இன்ஜினியர்ஸ்னு சொல்கிறாங்கல்ல, நீங்கள் கிட்டத்தட்ட சூப்பர் ஹீரோ இன்ஜினியர் மாதிரியா. தே நோ எவ்ரி திங், தே கேன் டூ எவ்ரி திங், தே நோ எவ்ரி திங், தே கேன் கிளியர் இன்டர்வியூஸ், ஐ மீன் ஈஸியாக பண்ண முடியும். பட் ஸ்டில் தே ஆர் நாட் ஆஸ் ப்ரொடக்டிவ் ஆஸ் த ஏர்லி ஸ்டேஜ் கம்பெனி நீட்ஸ். இதை எப்படி நீங்கள் பார்க்குறீங்க?
First of all, I think that this is a sweeping generalization.
Okay.
I don't think that's really very true. Okay. A good engineer is a good engineer. First of all, I'll tell you, right, you have to isolate in your model, you have to isolate the good engineer from the work environment. Okay, this is very, very important. Okay. Now, do FANG companies, you have to ask yourself a very important question. Do large companies hire well? Okay. They don't always hire well. Okay. They don't always hire well because they become so large that they set some very general rules, okay, where they'll say that you have to come from this college, you have to basically pass all these tests.
Yes.
They have to do all these things because they don't have the time to go. I mean, they're hiring like 200, 300 people a day. I don't know, whatever it is, in a good economy kind of situation. So, you get people who know how to game the system. அந்த இடத்துல வேலை வாங்கிறதுக்கு என்ன பண்ணணும்? I know people who take 6 months off, study for FANG, like they're studying for some IAS exam, go back and apply for FANG jobs, you know what I'm saying, and then basically go and join FANG. Okay. before those 6 months, they would have never solved any serious problem. The kind of problems that they learned to solve in those 6 months are supposed to reflect their experience and expertise. But it's not experience and expertise. They've basically gone through this whole thing. What do I do if my server slows down? I will, all the things that have been decanted into rules, they basically learn. Don't assume that because once they go in, they know everything. They probably struggle. And a lot of the people who leave the big companies don't fit that. They've gotten to the job, they don't fit, they come out. So you're not always getting very high quality people from big companies. That is very important thing you have to realize, right? Because the hiring process of using FANG style, system design, whatever question they ask, right? Without ascertaining what this person has done, how they have actually solved the problems, right? Creates a different set of issues, but big companies can absorb it. Okay, they can absorb it. They can because in the process of doing the 6 months, you have to learn something. The level of competency required in big companies is not necessarily very high. Sometimes, right? If you I worked in a core Oracle database team at some point. Now you got all these rings of layers. They ease out as you go and build rings around these. Okay, and the rings around these they become the requirement becomes easier and easier and easier. You got somebody working, supporting. For example, you have a lot more people, a lot more support structure.
Yes.
So big company work, once you get in, is a lot easier. A lot of times. Okay,
you have every toolkit,
everything there. Okay, so they fit in easily. So big companies, while I criticize them for using FANG style stuff, that's more than enough, right? The passing those FANG exams in their mind probably prove that these people are able to put in the effort to basically clear those interviews. I don't know if you've noticed, Google tells you how to prepare for their interviews, right? They send you a big note.
Yes.
That's not what you want to do. You really want that guy to have done that and then hire that kind of person. But the reason why that is not the priority is the jobs they are hiring for are not that great. Okay, there's a job seekers thing to find out. Now, that person basically lands up in a startup, right? They don't know enough. See, that is the problem there. So you go and hire a guy thinking, Oracle வேலை பண்ணியிருக்கான் இல்லைன்னா கூகுளில் வேலை பண்ணியிருக்கான், he knows all of these things, அவனை எடுத்துக்கலாம். Okay, and that guy, of course, he wants to sell his brand to come to a smaller company, right? And all of that. But what you actually get at the end of it is very little compared to the promise. This is a very, very regular thing. It has got nothing to do with engineers from a big company not working out in a small company. If you want to go and hire their big architect, okay, it's going to be a problem for you because you can't afford, right? Remember, the employee is not coming in as a co-founder, right?
Yes,
so why would he come from there to you, right? Because the RSUs will be as good as the stock options you give in a small startup.
Yes.
Right. So that is a problem. So what you land up with, if you look at it very logically, are people who have gone and run their life through in that place, and then they come. Their skill set is actually reduced. If you go and sit in a big place, and you're given a very comfortable job, you do only one thing over and over again. Even if you go and work in Google or Facebook or whatever, your skill sets will reduce over time.
ஓகே லிங்க்டின்ல நீங்கள் எழுதியிருந்தீங்க இந்த மாதிரி ஒரு இன்ஜினியர்ஸ் நீங்கள் ஹையர் பண்ணும்போது பேசிக்காக இஃப் யூ ஒரு இன்ஜினியர் ஒரு கம்பெனியில் போய் ஜாயின் பண்ணும்போது அங்கே இருக்கக்கூடிய ரெக்ரூட் பண்ணுற பீப்புளையோ ஆர் ஃபவுண்டர்ஸையோ மேனேஜர்ஸையோ பெரிய ஆளாக பார்க்கக்கூடாது அப்படிங்க பெர்ஸ்பெக்டில் ஒன்று எழுதியிருந்தீங்க. நான் எக்ஸாக்டாக உங்களுக்கு ரீகரெக்ட் பண்ணால் இதான்.
No, I know what I'm saying. I'll tell you what I wrote, and I'll tell you what I mean. Right?
Okay.
There are actually, because it's a two-sided answer. Okay, one is that when you hire somebody, okay, as a founder, especially if you're a technical co-founder, you need to hire people that are better than you. Okay, remember, you're not a co-founder because you're the best engineer in the world. Technical. You are a technical co-founder because you know how to identify talent, bring them in, and build a good organization, right? and you know what it takes to put all of that together. So you need to hire people who are very high quality. Now, the people who come in should also know that they are there because they are better than the founder, that they have this ability to basically add value to the organization, and that is why they are in there for. Okay? That is a very, very important part of basically building a successful startup. Right? You do not think that you want to be the tall pole in your organization, because then you will fail to do things. Somebody else knows how to do it better than you, right? And you're going to make money when the organization succeeds. You're not going to make money because you're the expert.
Yes.
Right. So you have to get people in who are able to basically give you that expertise. You're buying that expertise for stock or money, right? Yeah. So that is really how you have to think. And of course, I mean, you have to trust. Okay, you have to think, you have to trust, and you have to feel. You have to have you have to be vulnerable if you're a co-founder. Okay. If you're not vulnerable, what will happen is that you hold it, right?
வல்னரபிள் இங்கே வேர்டு யூஸ் பண்ணீங்களா அதை கொஞ்சம் டிஸ்கிரைப் பண்ண முடியுமா? ஏதாவது ஒரு சுச்சுவேஷன்.
அதாவது எனக்கு அதாவது தமிழில் வந்து சொன்னேன்னா, ஐயோ எனக்கு இது தெரியலையே, உன்னால் வந்து எனக்கு வந்து உதவி பண்ண முடியுமா? ஓகே, ஒரு அதுதான் வல்னரபிள்னா. ஓகே, அது வந்து உனக்கு தோணலாம் மனசில், ஆனால் அடுத்தவன்கிட்ட சொல்கிறது இருக்குல்ல. ஓகே, எனக்கு இது தெரியலப்பா, உன்னால் வந்து இது பண்ண முடியுமா? இப்போ நம்ம ஹோட்டல் நடத்துகிறோன்னா சமையலுக்கு ஒரு ஆள் எடுக்கிறோம். ஓகே, நான் ஒரு லாஸ் ஏஞ்சலஸில் ஒரு ஆள்கிட்ட ஒரு ரெஸ்டாரண்ட்டு போயிருந்தேன். சாப்பாடு ரொம்ப சுமாராக இருந்தது. ஸோ அவர் வந்து எங்கள் சமையல் பண்ணுற ஆள் யாருமே சரி, இந்த சமையல் பண்ணுற ஆளை வந்து நம்ம தலையில் தூக்கி வச்சுக்கணும். ஏன்னா அது வந்து மெயின் பிஸ்னஸ் ஹோட்டலில் சாப்பாடு தான். ஓகே, ஆனால் பாக்கி எல்லாம் என்ன நினைக்கிறேன், அவனை பேசினா அவன் நிறைய காசு பார்ப்பான், இல்லைனா இது பண்ணுவான், தே திங்க் லைக் தட், ரைட்? பட் நீ சொல்லணும், நான் வந்து ஐ எம் ஹியர் டு பேசிக்லி in order for me to, I have to realize, in order for me to make money, that expert has to come in and basically deliver this.
Yes.
Okay. And I have to share my happiness or my good times with that person, right? He may not be a founder, right? Okay. So you have to basically, vulnerability is that you are telling people that I don't know how to do this, you know how to do this better than me, or even better, make that person feel I'm here because I'm the expert. Okay. Yes. And that is what is expected of me. That's what I mean.
Amazing explanation, vulnerability, business point of view. So ஒரு founder
I'll tell you one thing, right? Yeah. One example I would like to give of this. Chargebee CEO, the gentleman by name Chris Subramaniam, right? I actually saw him do that. He was not afraid to express his vulnerability to his employees, to the people who reported to him. Okay, he did not say that I know everything. Okay, you know what I'm saying.
He sought the help, basically asking for help in areas where you lack expertise.
Yeah. And making that other person know that you are asking for that help because they know better than you.
Yes.
Okay. There are two things to it, right? You know, you can go and say, let me see whether you can do it, and I don't know how to do it, right? Then that person, you're creating insecurity in that person, right? Because he'll think, oh man, I don't know, am I doing a right job? So I'm asking you to do it because I don't know how to do it, right? Okay, can you do this for me?
ஸோ டெலிகேஷன், ஒர்க்கை டெலிகேட் பண்ணுறதுல அடிப்படை வந்து இந்த வல்னரபிலிட்டி அப்படின்னு நம்ம எடுத்துக்கலாமா?
Why would you connect delegation and vulnerability?
நீங்கள் இப்போ சொன்ன ஒரு
இல்லை
ஓகே இல்லையா?
Delegation is not the same as vulnerability. Because they're two. See, I mean, they're not. I don't think in my mind they are connected.
Okay.
Because delegation is when you have you have a heavy load, you know how to do it. Okay, but you can't do it all. Okay, and then you basically say you do it, right? I mean, in my mind, it can be that I also don't know how to do it and I give it. Okay, but it is not tied to vulnerability.
Okay.
Delegation is simply, I mean, I can't do all the work, right? I'm a co-founder, I'm a manager, whatever it is. So I find other people to do this for me so that I can go and focus on something else.
Other things, okay.
That's really what it is.
Okay. On a related topic outside of our script. மைக்ரோ மேனேஜ்மெண்ட் அப்படின்னு ஒன்று சொல்லுவாங்க, நீங்கள் கேள்விப்பட்டிருப்பீங்க. உங்களோட கரியரில் ஹாவ் பீப்புள் ட்ரை டு மைக்ரோ மேனேஜ் யூ? கொஸ்டின் 1. Have you observed others micromanaging their team? And அந்த மாதிரி ஒருத்தவங்க பண்ணாங்கன்னா under what situations would you recommend people to micromanage and then zoom out little bit above?
See, the trouble with micromanagement is that it's very difficult. See, the thing is that it is about, if you and me are working together and I'm your manager, right? I tell you this needs to be done and you go and do it, right? Okay. But the real world, it doesn't happen that way. I need it to be done within this time in a particular way, whole bunch of other things, right? So it's a very situational thing. You cannot say that this person is a micromanager or this company has got a micromanaging culture. It's really a very, very situational thing.
Okay.
It could be because the quality of people that you can afford, who you hire, are not require a lot of handholding. Okay, it could be that you don't have a proper mechanism of conveying what you want, right? So you go back and forth with that person, right? I mean, you can do that. It could be that you are very insecure, okay, and therefore you basically are making sure things get done. So there's a whole bunch of things that fall under micromanagement. It's very difficult for me to basically pinpoint. With all my experience, this is the one thing, right? I mean, people do it for different reasons. It happens for different reasons. The receiver views it as different reasons. Where it becomes a problem is you're fully competent, you know what you're doing, and somebody breathes down your neck, okay? And they basically create some level of toxicity. I think that is something that you have to worry about. But there are situations where, you know, asking for specific things and basically monitoring them makes sense.
Yes, it is appropriate in some situations.
Yeah.
Especially when people lack ownership. Micromanagement.
It's more than ownership, I think it is skill sometimes.
Okay.
Right? Because sometimes I told you, right, a lot of the problems that come is tied to skill.
Okay.
Okay? You always wind up hiring in our industry because there are we always have a labor shortage. We have a labor shortage because of skills. Okay, we have a human beings available, but we don't have skills. You go and try to hire people. It's very difficult to hire the people with 100% of skills that you need all the time. Okay, now you got these people without skills, but you have to hire them because you need to get the work done. Then you have to help them do the work. Okay. Nobody is going to come and tell you, I don't know how to do the work. They'll do it wrong and then they'll sit and justify. Right?
Yeah.
So, if you sense that, then you have to step in and start basically doing things that will enable that person. Some people will allow you to do that, right? Okay. Some people will resist it because, you're making them feel. So, how you communicate that, how you make the other person feel when you're doing the micromanaging, I think that really, really, really matters. It's not micromanaging itself is not a problem.
Not a problem. Okay. Thank you. ஜோயல் ஸ்பால்க்ஸியோட ஒரு கோட் வந்து மென்ஷன் பண்ணுறீங்க. ஏன்னா எனக்கு வந்து நான் 2009 ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ணும்போது அவரோட பிளாக், அவரும் ஜெஃப் அட்வுட், அவரோட பிளாக் ரொம்ப ரொம்ப பிடிச்சது. ஸோ இதில் நீங்கள் சொன்ன ஒரு விஷயம், நாட் ஸ்மார்ட் இன்ஜினியர்ஸ் ஹூ கேன் கெட் திங்ஸ் டன் வில் பில்ட் த ராங் திங் அப்படிங்கிற மாதிரி ஒரு கோட் சொல்லியிருந்தீங்க. அந்த கோட் பற்றி ஒரு ஃபவுண்டர் வந்து ஏன் அதை தெரிஞ்சுக்கணும்?
First of all, I'll tell you one thing. Okay. There's no such thing as a smart engineer and a dumb engineer. Okay. So I know that Joel Spassky uses that language. It's very arrogant language. Okay. I mean, now I realize it. So there are people who don't have the skills, but they have the diligence. I told you, it's the old problem, right? You hire somebody that doesn't have the engineering smarts or doesn't have the knowledge, the skills, whatever it is.
The competency
required for it. And they basically, but they try to make it up with the attitude, the working hard and all that. That's why we went to the carpenter example. What they wind up doing is they wind up leaving a mess. And you can't tell them horrible things because you shouldn't tell anybody horrible things, but you cannot even get mad at them because they put in everything they got, but this is what they're doing. So if you load up a bunch of people with very good attitude who don't have the skills, okay, you will have things going bad, and you will really be struggling to communicate that, because everybody is there. You go at 6 o'clock in the morning, people are there. At 6 o'clock in the evening, they're there. At midnight, they're there. They don't eat, sleep. They eat, sleep, everything in the office. Your product sucks, right? Your work doesn't get done. You know what I'm saying, right? Okay, and that I think is what, in a way, Joel Spolsky is trying to communicate, right? I mean, you need so he says you need to hire smart people who know how to get the work done, right? So what he really means, in my thing, is you need people with the required skills for the job, who know how to get the work done, okay, who have the work ethic and everything else. If you have one or the other, then it's a problem.
கிட்டத்தட்ட இந்த ஆப்ரேஷன் சக்ஸஸ் பேஷண்ட் டெட்டுன்னு சொல்லுவாங்களே, எல்லோரும் ஹார்ட் ஒர்க் பண்ணுறாங்க, பட் அவுட்கம் வர்றது. ஸோ ஒரு வேலை கொடுத்துருப்பாங்க, அந்த வேலையை எல்லோரும் கண்ணை மூடிட்டு அப்படியே செய்வாங்க, அவுட்புட் வந்துடும், ஆனால் அவுட்கம் ஆர் வி டூயிங் த ரைட் திங் அப்படிங்கிற கேள்வியே இருக்காது.
See, you get into a taxi, very nice, pleasant, or taxi. I mean, somebody who drives a car is a classic example, right? I mean, you can hire a driver who's very nice, who's caring, who'll carry your bags wherever, whatever it is, right? But he doesn't know how to drive. Right. He is putting your life at risk. You know what I'm saying, right? Okay. So you have to know. I mean, maybe you can give him some other job to do, but you can't ask him to drive. Right? See, we make that mistake all the time, right? When you say attitude, oh, I don't care whether he's a good driver. If he's not a good driver, he puts your life at risk. He basically damages your car. You add up all of that.
நாம் ஃபஸ்ட்டாக when we discussed, நான் உங்கள்கிட்ட அந்த சைக்காலஜிக்கல் சேஃப்டி புக்கை பற்றி, அந்த டாபிக் பற்றி பேசும்போது, அண்ட் சிலிக்கான் வேலி பற்றி நான் உங்கள்கிட்ட கேட்கும்போது நீங்கள் ஒன்று சொன்னீங்க. சிலிக்கான் வேலியில் ஒரு விஷயம் தப்பாக இருக்குன்னா ஹெசிடேட்டே பண்ண மாட்டாங்க. அது தப்புன்னு கால் அவுட் பண்ணுறதுக்கு ஹெசிடேட்டே பண்ண மாட்டாங்க. திஸ் இஸ் ஸ்டூபிட் அப்படின்னு சொல்லி போய்கிட்டே இருப்பாங்க. கான்ஃப்ளிக்ட்ஸ் ஆர் வெரி ஓப்பன் அப்படின்னு சொன்னீங்க. இப்போ நீங்கள் அது சொன்னதுக்கும் இந்த கம்பீட்டன்ஸுக்கும் ஒரு ரிலேஷன்ஷிப் இருக்குது.
So, yeah, people are culturally more direct in the Silicon Valley. Okay. Maybe even if you go to Indiana or Mississippi or something in the US itself, that directness is not there. Okay. In the valley, people are direct. The advantage of directness is, I mean, bad thing about directness is you have to get used to it. Okay. The advantage of it is that there's nothing after that. It's simple. I mean, you don't know how to write code. Man, go learn it or do whatever. I don't care. Okay. I mean, or you go and fix this. I don't like this. I mean, that is really, it tells you where you stand.
It saves time for the business.
It saves time, not just the business. It saves time for the individual who's struggling.
Okay.
I know people who dropped programming as a career because they've been told you don't fit. Okay. I mean,
அவங்க கம்ப்யூட்டர் படித்தவங்களா?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, just because you went and learned programming and then you wrote some hello world program in your college doesn't mean you fit, right? Okay, the person, sometimes people are very unhappy doing, especially in IT, there are a lot of people who are very, very unhappy doing what they're doing. They do it because it pays more money. So you really, sometimes when you get that message, you say, okay, I mean, I'll go do something else, right?
True.
Okay, see,
many of us, including myself, I started as an engineer because it pays really good salary.
Yeah, but the thing is that you get that message.
Yes.
Okay, you don't get it from everywhere, but I've seen that message. I mean, Americans are more direct than everybody else. The Silicon Valley is more direct than other Americans. Okay, I mean, or Silicon Valley-like culture.
Silicon Valley-like culture. நீங்கள் உங்களோட ஃபஸ்ட்டு ஜாபில் அந்த ரிட்டையர்டு நேவி பர்சன் யாரோ ஒருத்தர் தானே,
நீல் பர்க்மன்.
அவர் உங்களுக்கு ஃபஸ்ட் அந்த போர்டு எடுத்து ஃபிக்ஸ் பண்ணு அப்படின்னு சொல்கிறாரு, அந்த வாட் எவர் இட் இஸ். உங்களுக்கு அவர் சொன்ன ஃபீட்பேக் எப்படி இருந்துச்சு இனிஷியல் டேஸில்? உங்களுக்கு அது தெரியாது, உங்களுக்கு அந்த ஒர்க் ரிலேட்டடாக நிறைய விஷயங்கள் உங்களுக்கு தெரியாதுன்னு சொன்னீங்க. அவர் அந்த ஃபீட்பேக் உங்களுக்கு சொல்லும்போது ஹவ் வாஸ் இட், ஹவு டிட் இட் ஃபீல் ஃபார் யூ?
See, one thing you have to understand, right? I was an immigrant wanting to get a green card.
Okay.
Okay, so anytime anybody said anything negative, I would worry about this guy, will it build up to somebody firing me?
Okay.
You
Okay.
get it, right? Because
புரியுது.
it is a survival thing. Okay. So I can't really give it in the perspective of how things are. See, it's very, very hard to be an immigrant in any country. Okay. It looks very lovely sitting here in Madras. I mean, I'm a US citizen now. I live here on an OCI and all that. But it is hard. Okay. Because you are going to a new country. You're at the age of 24, 25, 22, whatever it is. You're learning a new culture, right? And you don't know whether it will work out for you or not. Right? And if you come from a third world country to a first world country, coming back to the third world country and is a fall in expectation. It takes a lot of maturity to understand all of that. So it's hard.
ரிமோட் ஒர்க் பற்றி நீங்கள் உங்களோட ஒப்பீனியன் என்ன? எஸ்பெஷலி கோவிடுக்கு முன்னாடி வரைக்கும் பெருசாக ரிமோட் ஒர்க்கு இருந்ததில்லை. அப்புறம் ஆக்சலரேட் ஆச்சு. அப்புறம் இட் இஸ் நோ லாங்கர் தேர். உங்கள் டீம் எப்படி நீங்கள் மேனேஜ் பண்ணி கரண்ட் டீம் எப்படி மேனேஜ் பண்ணுறீங்க? ரிமோட் ஒர்க் பற்றி உங்களோட ஜென்ரல் ஒப்பீனியன் என்ன?
So before COVID happened, this is a very coincidental thing. 1 month before all of that happened, I got my team to all start working from home as an experiment.
ஓ, பிஃபோர்
Okay,
கோவிட்.
before 1 month before.
Okay.
Okay, at Chargebee. The reason I did that is that I was finding people, even in Chennai, where the traffic is not as bad as Bangalore or Hyderabad, people are traveling long distances, okay, struggling. See, if you go and come from Kolattur and you drive and you land up in
Perungudi.
Perungudi, and then you start working and you're tired, right? Then you take a break. I mean, if you add up all of that, there's a lot of wasted time. Number one. Okay. So first thing that I wanted to do is within the city, you stay within the city, right? We meet once in a while on an as needed basis, right? But on a day, it's very simple. You begin your day at 9 o'clock in the morning with a stand up, right? I mean, teams do their own stand ups. You run all the way until 5 or 6 in the evening, you shut down and go. During that time, there's no commute, there is no drama in your life, okay? You sit down and you do your work, right? Okay, so to me, that is a very, very, I felt that it will basically help people. Now, I'll tell you one thing. My first experience with remote was I worked for a company called Gupta SQL in the US, okay? What my boss did is it was kind of a database startup, and the boss basically had limited office space. So you had a choice of either coming into work or they'll give you a computer, and there was no internet and all in those days, and you work from home.
Okay.
And you come in like once a week to integrate with other people. You bring all your
Oh, which year was it?
1990s.
Oh, okay.
Okay. We did that, and there were people I worked with that were very, very effective because they didn't commute. I mean, there was somebody who was living very far away. They would come one day, they would come and do all this, make a presentation, do all the integration, and they'll go back, right? Other 4 days, they just sat down and worked from home, or sometimes they came once in 2 weeks or whatever it is. Okay, so people who wanted to socialize came into work. People who wanted to work from home worked. Okay, so it was a hybrid model. So I'm a big believer. That is one thing, right? I mean, it saves commute time, which is a big thing. Okay. Secondly, I think we are at this point where we have enough tools that people can work remotely. Okay. The third thing that I'm hoping that remote work will do is it will not force you into unnecessary meetings at engineer levels and all of that, because you communicate everything at fixed times, like once or twice a day, beginning of the day, end of the day, and then you're basically logged in and doing your work. You ask questions asynchronously. You have to have a system, by the way. You can't just go and do random things. Now, the thing is that you'll have to also change your metric. You move from the attitude, இவன் வந்து அப்படியே கஷ்டப்பட்டு என் முன்னாடி வேலை பண்ணிகிட்டு இருக்கான்னு சொல்கிறத விட அவன் இந்த வேலை பண்ணதுனால you just move it entirely to outcome. You get it, right? You move it to outcome. So that means that the person who works remotely has got less chance of being given a break because he was seen working compared to actual outcome he produces. Okay, which I'm okay with. Okay. The next reason why I like remote is, so if you go and look at Bangalore, you'll know that people shouldn't commute. Okay, it's a big mess. The city is falling apart. Okay, everybody is basically commuting. They're commuting 3 kilometers for 100 minutes or something like that. Okay, and I don't know how productive they are because I have not dealt with it. Okay,
I've been there.
okay, it's not very good,
Yeah,
right? Okay, now if you allow people to go wherever they want, right, in the small towns and all of that, and you let them work wherever they want collaboratively and all of that, you can hire people from all kinds of places. Your cost of living and lifestyle, moving resources. See, every good school in the world either comes from Madras or Bangalore or Hyderabad. Okay, everything goes to people who have money. All the people who have money live in urban slums. You don't have a good life and all that. So I think that we need as a society to move in a direction where you can work in a lot more places than you can. COVID forced us to do that, but unfortunately, founders don't trust their employees.
Employees.
And they don't have to trust their employees, what I'm saying. Make it very outcome driven.
Okay.
Right. There are cases where I'm doing a startup right now, and right now we are meeting every other day, 2-3 days a week, because we need to discuss certain things and whiteboard and all those things, right? But once you get into the mode of you've done something, then it changes. But I don't think that there is any doubt in my mind that you have to go remote work, you have to go outcome based, you have to take, productivity has to be measured by outcome and not by effort.
Effort.
See, this is the main thing. Everybody wants, even employee wants people to recognize effort. They don't want to look at outcome. Unfortunately, that is not possible if you want effort versus outcome, you'll get the jobs that pay less generally look at effort. Jobs that pay more like IT jobs look at outcome. Okay.
ஒரு ஃபார்மரோ இல்லை ஒரு இண்டஸ்ட்ரியில் ஒர்க் பண்ணுறவங்களோ மேனுவல் லேபராக இருக்கும்போது அங்கே எஃபர்ட் வேணும்.
ஆமாம்.
வி ஆர் knowledge economy.
It's not just that. Even here, I'm sure that if you go to an IT job that doesn't pay very well, okay, that is where I told you then we're going back to this whole thing about, competence versus attitude, right? They look at attitude, he's putting in the effort. But I told you what I think about that. So it has to be outcome, remote outcome. Don't sit down and worry whether this guy is working on a second job. In fact, I really think that a person who works on a second job is adding value to you, provided he gives you outcome. Okay? Because he's learning something from the other job. He's doing AI in the other job and he's doing your stuff, and he comes and says, hey, can I try this out? Right? You say, I need 40 hours of work from you. Okay, 40 hours worth of work. You get it, right?
Yes, I get it.
Okay, and
the
then,
outcome.
And then you say, this is the outcome I want, and I want it by this time. If you're not doing it, I don't care whether you did a second job or a third job or whatever it is, you have to do that. Okay? The trouble is that I think all these things happen because we don't have enough competent people. This is the real problem. The number of people that are required who have the skills to do the job is not equal to the number of people that are available. Okay? Because of that, you don't think that even if the outcome is bad, you can fire somebody because there is nobody to replace them. I think that is what runs in people's mind. So it becomes the pain. If I fire somebody, then that work doesn't get done. That's really what it is.
Okay.
And that is a different problem that society has to solve.
ஓகே. நீங்கள் அந்த மல்டிபிள் ஜாப்ஸ் பற்றி சொன்னீங்களா, ஒரே இன்ஜினியர் வந்து பண்ணால் இட்ஸ் அ குட் திங் ஃபார் அ கம்பெனின்னு சொன்னீங்களா. ஐ டோன்ட் நோ ஹவு ஆக்டிவ் யூ ஆர் இன் ட்விட்டர். ஒரு 2-3 மந்த்ஸ்க்கு முன்னாடி ஒரு பர்டிகுலர் இன்ஜினியர், இந்தியன் இன்ஜினியர், he had worked for 4 to 5 companies at the same time. Name எனக்கு தெரியல. I'll find it out later.
No, I know what you're talking about. He worked for a government, first of all.
Okay.
And he used government time in order to basically go work for somebody else.
Okay.
That is not what I'm saying. That's why I said, okay, I'll make it very, very clear. Okay. Your 40 hours you owe to the guy who gives you a full-time salary. Okay. And you owe to get his outcome going. Over and above that, okay, is your time and you can do whatever
You can do
want,
whatever you
or
want.
whatever you want. Okay? You can't go work for the company. So there are some rules of ethics of that, right? But that cannot be the reason why you won't allow somebody to work remote. Okay, so that guy was basically taking people's money, government money, okay, not working for the government and working for somebody else. I know the case you're talking about, okay. Likewise, if I went and worked, somebody worked for me in my startup and did exactly what they're doing in my startup for somebody else on the side, that is not okay, okay. But if they worked for me in my startup and then they were building some large language model for somebody outside and that knowledge is useful for me, that I like. Because that guy becomes better without because of some other experience, right? So it is really you have to have a certain set of ethics. By the way, these things that is why I said you should isolate what you want from a person. You have to look at the outcome. That outcome, if you're getting it, okay, you have to look at outcome. I told you, right? You have to look at outcome and you have to look at ethics. Okay, if that outcome comes to you without any ethics being compromised,
Good.
you're good.
ஓகே ஓகே ஸோ சென்னை வந்து சாஸ் கேபிட்டல் ஆஃப் இந்தியான்னு சொல்கிறாங்க. ஏஐ வந்ததுக்கப்புறம் தெர் வாஸ் ஸோ மச் ஆஃப் டாக் தட் சாஸ் இஸ் நோ லாங்கர் ரெலவெண்ட். நீங்கள் நிறைய எழுதியிருக்கீங்க சாஸையும் ஏஐயும் பற்றி. அப்படின்னா சம் பிளேசஸ் இட் கேன் பி அ டெக்கரேட்டிவ் திங், சம்டைம்ஸ் இட் கேன் பி த ஆக்சுவல் engine behind the product அப்படின்னு சொல்கிறீங்க.
So first of all, let's not mix up all this. Okay, SaaS is simply this, right? I'm going to talk about evolution there. We first wrote software that ran on our PCs. You wrote a program on top of DBase that basically stored video rentals and did grocery. You could do grocery automation, all of that, right? E-commerce, whatever. I mean, you could do that. Everything sat on your PC. Okay, then you went to client server. Okay, so each company bought a server where they installed the software and you're the client running on the machine of your employees, right? Okay, so you had multiple people having the software running on that server and it could be multiple versions, right? Eventually, what you did is you moved the computing logic centrally somewhere. Okay, and then everybody in the world was using that central somewhere computing logic in order to basically get their compute done. That is SaaS. Okay. Yes. Now, what that enabled people to develop tools to manage it and deal with security, efficiency. It allowed you to abstract out the machines that you basically ran it on. It created all these ability to basically spin off a new server, remove a server. It went into serverless mode. All of those things came from AWS, GCP, Azure, and all of that. So it created a whole world. Okay, so this is SaaS. Nothing has changed. Whatever happens, it's there. AI is about how compute happens. Okay, so it sits on top. It sits inside the vessel called SaaS. Right? Okay. You can do compute in two ways in the world. Okay, one is by rules. Okay, if you build accounting software, it's based on rules. If you build a lot of these things, they are based on rules.
Yes.
Okay, I mean, you basically somebody does a
logical.
Compute. Okay, it's if then else statements, whatever it is, right?
Yes, yes.
I mean, that's what essence the programming is. And then there is fuzzy. Okay, I upload a photograph and you have to look at that photograph and tell me who are in the photograph. Your rules won't work. Okay, or if you're because there are infinite
possibilities.
Okay, so you have to think. I mean, I upload a photograph and tell me the ethnicity of all these people, right? It's all completely fuzzy. Anything that the world has solved before the arrival of AI to the common man. AI has been around for a long time. Okay, everything that was programming was done for logic, and everything that was fuzzy was done by the human. Okay. Now, if you have a problem that is fuzzy that was not solved before, you can solve it now with AI. I call it AI first. Okay, that is one thing. Then there is AI inside.
Yes.
Okay, what is AI inside is in your compute logic, there are fuzzy elements, right, that you have to feed in. You can't use compute to deal with fuzzy elements, right? Okay, so you take those things and you basically use AI. For example, you take a relational database and you build a graph database out of it, right? You write a script, you do all the mapping, whatever it is, right? Today you can just ask AI to actually do it for you, to figure out and do it for you, right? Okay, you can ask, you can make it generate things. I mean, there are lots of things you can do. So even though your program itself is a rules based, there are fuzzy elements to it that you can change. Okay, that is AI inside. Okay, so there are two ways in which AI goes, but whether it is AI first or AI only, AI inside, all of that are boiling in the vessel called SaaS. Okay, so it's not SaaS becoming AI. AI gets added as a spice
Ingredient.
or as an ingredient into
Some places-
into the SaaS compute thing, right? You're still using servers, you still are using all the things that you need and all that. So in AI, you're a different set of problems.
Yes.
It is compute cost. You will think about server space and all of that. That's there.
ஜாப் ஸ்டெபிலிட்டியை பற்றி ஐடியில் இருக்கவங்க நிறைய பேர் ஒரி பண்ணுறாங்க, எஸ்பெஷலி பீப்புள் ஹூ ஆர் அபோவ் 30-35. அவங்களோட க்ரோத் வந்து பிளாட்டூ ஆகுது. ஸோ ஜாப் செக்யூரிட்டியை பற்றி வாட் இஸ் யுவர் ஒப்பீனியன்? ஹவு ஷுட் அன் இன்ஜினியர் ஹூ இஸ் ஜாயினிங் அ ஜாப் நவ் ஷுட் see this and prepare themselves for this?
I'm going to tell you something here. Okay, there's no such thing as job security.
Okay.
Okay, number one.
Okay.
Okay, you need to basically retool yourself.
Retool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So if you don't retool yourself, nobody will come and help you. Okay. This is a very, very simple thing. Okay. The nature of this technology, whether it is AI, whether it is SaaS, client server. See, I moved from mainframes to CPM to DOS to Windows to client server.
அசம்பிளிலேருந்து ஆரம்பிச்சிருக்கீங்க.
Yeah, right. All the way to what is now called AI, right? I mean, I don't work for anybody anymore. Okay. Now, in that journey, okay, every time something changed, you have to go and learn something. When we moved from DOS to Windows, okay, you had to become a Windows programmer suddenly. The DOS would slowly go down, character mode will go down, GUI would go up. You have to go and learn the Windows SDK. Then the Windows SDK would get modified into Microsoft Foundation class libraries. Those will become something else. You know, suddenly something called XML came into play. All these things are there, right? Some of them have actually bettered. The number of programmers who could program in C was very small. Right now, using Python and Ruby, anybody who wants to learn programming and do it can do it.
Yes.
Okay. Previously, there was just software that you wrote. Then you had libraries. Then you had frameworks. Now, what frameworks did is that you don't have to write code for everything. It's already available. எடுத்து தூக்கி போட்டுக்கலாம். Okay. So there are all these things are there. You have to basically keep it relevant. Okay. Again, I told you the problem of not having enough competent people. It is also that everybody thinks that they have finished their college, they've gone and learned something and they want to settle down. Because people are generally uncomfortable with learning new things in an area where they are not interested in. You get it, right? If you basically like something, every day you will go. If you love history, you will go and read something new in history every day. Okay. But if you fundamentally are doing computer programming because your dad and mom went and admitted you to an IT school, okay, and they said இது படிச்சாதான் வந்து நாளைக்கு வந்து your entire life, you know, you will all brighten up, and then you show up in this place and say 10 years later I say the technology canvas changes. AI is a technology canvas, SaaS is a technology canvas, client server is a technology canvas. The next technology canvas change, you have to learn something. Oh, but I didn't expect that. I learned all this IT because, you know, I'll get into this job, I'll get this big salary and I'll live happily ever after. Okay? It doesn't work that way. okay, you have to basically change. Okay, you have to change when you're 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. You know
Keep
what
learning.
it is? Okay. Whereas if you go and work in the construction business, my son is my son is basically studying to graduate in construction. A lot of the things remain slower and static. There's technology, but it's the infusion of technology is not that much, right? As it is in tech or in IT or whatever it is. So you have to make those choices. You have to really like this thing in order to do it. My advice to people is, please, if you don't like IT, okay, don't do it. It is not necessarily a money spinner like you think, because in the middle of your life, when you have two kids and you have a mortgage, you will just lose a job and you don't know what will come and hit you.
Every 10-year technology shift happens.
I think so, yeah.
10 to 7 to 10 years.
Whatever. I mean, you can go and measure it yourself. Yeah.
இப்போ ஒரு ஃபவுண்டர் வந்து ஒரு பிஸ்னஸ் ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ணுறாங்க, டெக் பிஸ்னஸ், அது ப்ராடக்ட் பிஸ்னஸாக இருக்கலாம், இல்லைனா சர்வீஸ் பிஸ்னஸாக இருக்கலாம். அவங்க இப்படி ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ணும்போது இந்த மாதிரி ஒரு ஷிஃப்ட்டுக்கு அவங்கள எப்படி தயார்படுத்திக்கணும்? இந்த மாதிரி ஒரு ஷிஃப்ட் வந்து அவங்க பிஸ்னஸ் அவங்களுக்கு ஒரு கேஷ் ஃப்ளோ வந்தோடனே எல்லோரும், வென் யூ ஹேவ் அ கேஷ் ஃப்ளோ, யூ திங்க் எவ்ரி திங் இஸ் கோயிங் அக்கார்டிங் டு யுவர் பிளான் அண்ட் நத்திங், தெர் இஸ் going to be no surprise. Most of them assume this, whatever they have got is guaranteed. Okay, so how should they prepare for this kind of cyclic changes?
So, you want to know the truth?
Okay.
Most of the time, people don't prepare for it, and then they become irrelevant, right? Okay.
Okay.
Do you see debates around? Do you see Lotus around? Okay. Do you see DOS around? Okay. So, what advice will you give them? Oh, you have to do. DOS became Windows. Microsoft, that is what Microsoft. The guys who do it, DOS became Windows, Microsoft. Microsoft has stayed relevant. Okay. All the other guys, they basically have gone, they've gone out of business,
yes.
right? I used to work for a company called Software Publishing Corporation. Okay. They made a presentation software called Harvard Graphics.
Never
Harvard Graphics was, even today, the feature set, okay, is better than PowerPoint. Okay. Fundamentally, Harvard Graphics died because it was too fat when this tiny company called PowerPoint that Microsoft bought was very thin, right? So Harvard Graphics is one product they were selling at $500 a pop. Okay. It had things like you could integrate data into it, you could put cross tabs, you could put spreadsheets, okay, all kinds of things. Presentations were doable. Okay. They failed because the rich set was completely built in DOS. When they tried to move it to Windows, okay, they couldn't catch up, right? Because we are talking about technology company, right? So they died. This was they had 95% market share in presentation graphics. PowerPoint at 5%. Microsoft buys PowerPoint, and Harvard Graphics basically diminishes. Only PowerPoint now.
Yeah, I had never even heard of that company.
Okay, so companies will. Founders, first of all, I don't know. I mean, you have to ask the founders how they'll deal with it. They should just be aware that this is going to happen to them one day.
Okay, every day you are someone is working to make you irrelevant.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, unless you basically, I told you Microsoft is a one-off case. Okay.
நல்ல எக்ஸாம்பிள் கிராமர்லின்னு ஒன்று இருந்துச்சுல்ல, ஒரு 5-6 இயர்ஸ்க்கு
No,
முன்னாடி.
my son still uses it.
Oh, they use it. Okay.
Yeah, they have integrated AI into it and all of that. It's still useful. It's useful because if you can generate essays with Chargebee, but the problem is it looks very artificial. You can use Grammarly to humanize it. You can
make it very personal.
Yeah.
In your style, in your own
So
style.
they found a niche. I don't know whether they'll be successful long term or not, right?
நல்ல எக்ஸாம்பிள் ஸ்டாக் ஓவர்ஃப்ளோவே எடுத்துக்கலாம். ஸ்டாக் ஓவர்ஃப்ளோ வாஸ் so relevant until 2014-15. I mean, probably 16-18 வரைக்கும் கூட they were very much relevant. Now, after ChatGPT and all this came, for some reasons people don't go back to Stack Overflow. Even I don't go to Stack Overflow. I go very rarely.
No, yeah. Anything that you basically ask questions and get answers, you basically go through an LLM or whatever it is. That's the genie that does all the work for you, right?
Someone named Hamid Rahmatullah asked this question. I understand that the abstraction is natural progress and we would always optimize for efficiency. But eliminating junior roles using automations and agentic AI tools would break the junior to senior pipeline. How do you see it, and what's the best approach for today's tech leaders?
Okay, so back to the question I said, right? We have a shortage of competent people.
Okay.
Okay, that's number one. Okay, there's no junior senior. So what happens is that the junior person so the junior guy is not being eliminated out. You previously what you'll do is you'll hire 10 people, out of which 3 are competent, 7 are basically you would not otherwise hire them, right? That's all that you got, right? So the entry level guy is still needed. You need fewer of them, and that's all that you have in a market. Okay, so the junior to senior pipeline is not disrupted.
Okay.
You got a smart junior guy now,
Okay.
and AI to help them, rather than anybody that you can get, right?
Okay.
So that is really what is happening. So it will eliminate jobs where people, anybody could get a job. That will go away. But the very, very good people, they will fundamentally be in the system, and they will be leveraging AI to basically increase their productivity and the productivity of the organization.
ஓகே ஜீரோ மெயின்டெனன்ஸ் இன்ஜினியர்ஸ்னு ஒரு கம்யூனிட்டி ரன் பண்ணுறேன்னா இந்த கேப்பை ஃபில் பண்ணுறக்காக தான் நான் பண்ணுறேன். வாட் வி டீச்சர்ஸ் நீங்கள் கொஞ்ச நேரத்துக்கு முன்னாடி ஒன்று சொன்னீங்க என்னென்னா லேர்ன் பண்ணுறதுக்கான எபிலிட்டி வந்து ஆட்டோமேட்டிக்காக இருக்கணும். ஆஸ் வி ஏஜ் வி ஹேவ் டு பி ரெடி டு லேர்ன் சொன்னீங்களா. கிட்டத்தட்ட இந்த மாதிரி சாஃப்ட் ஸ்கில்ஸை மட்டும் தான் நான் ஃபோக்கஸ் பண்ணுறேன். ஹார்ட் டெக் ஸ்கில்ஸ் எதுவுமே ஃபோக்கஸ் பண்ணல. அந்த க்யூரியாசிட்டி ரீட்டைன் பண்ணுறது ஆர் ரீப்ளான் பண்ணுறது தான் அதனோட அப்ஜெக்டிவாக வச்சு பண்ணிட்டுருக்கோம். பட் தேங்க்யூ ஃபார் தட். நெக்ஸ்ட்டு இன்னொருத்தர் திலக் அப்படின்னு ஒருத்தர் ஒரு கோயம்புத்தூரில் வந்து கேட்டிருந்தாரு. இன் ஏர்லி ஸ்டேஜ் டெக் டீம்ஸ் where resources are limited and product needs to scale across both web and mobile simultaneously, how should founders approach hiring? Should the priority be full stack generalists who can cover multiple layers, or specialists for back end, front end and mobile? And how do you balance skill depth versus cultural fit when hiring developers at the early stage?
I think I've answered this at multiple levels, right? You hire people who basically have good skills, okay? Now, generally, people should be able to do a few things. You can't hire a person who's doing only one thing or two things and all that. So that's kind of one of those things that you have to do, right? This is a much longer question. I think that I'll keep it at this.
Okay. Next question is, changing face of tech landscape, what are the few things young engineers should focus on? I think இந்த கொஸ்டினுக்கான ஆன்சர் நீங்கள் கியூரியாசிட்டி, லேர்னிங், கன்சிஸ்டண்ட்டாக லேர்ன் பண்ணுறது மட்டும் தான் ஒரே சாய்ஸ் அப்படிங்கிறத அதான் ஆன்சர் நான் பார்க்குறேன். வாட் ஆர் த சைன்ஸ் தட் அ ஸ்டார்ட் அப்ஸ் டெக் டீம் இஸ் ஸ்கேலிங் டூ ஃபாஸ்ட் ஆர் டூ ஸ்லோ? அதிலே நிறைய கேட்டிருக்காரு. ஹவு டு யூ நோ வென் யூ ஆர் ஆடிங் இன்ஜினியர்ஸ் ஃபாஸ்டர் தேன் யுவர் ப்ராடக்ட் மெச்சூரிட்டி, ஆர் வென் யூ ஆர் ஹோல்டிங் பேக் ஹையர்ஸ் அண்ட் ஸ்லோயிங் இன்னோவேஷன்?
Well, I'll tell you one thing, very simple answer. Your market will dictate a lot of these things. Your market and your available money will dictate these things, okay? You don't need to obsess about it. You will know.
You will know.
Okay.
அண்ட் ஃபைனலாக நேற்று நீங்கள் மென்ஷன் பண்ண அந்த கெமிஸ்ட்ரியில் ஒரு பிரின்சிபல் சொன்னீங்கல்ல, ஐ வாண்ட் டு கால் அவுட் தட் நேம், லீ சாட்லர்ஸ் பிரின்சிபல். அதை பற்றி
So I kind of use this very philosophically. I learned something in chemistry when I was a kid, right? It was called Lee Chatterley's principle. What it says in chemistry, is that you got these three main parameters in chemistry: temperature, pressure, and concentration, right? And together they create what is called as chemical equilibrium. If one of those parameters change, once the equilibrium is disturbed, okay, they pump up the value of one of these parameters so that the equilibrium is restored again, right? So if you look at technology, if you are building a tech team, you got people, process and technology. Let's say that your technology screws up. Okay, the way you manage your technology screw up is by adding more people, by adding more process, so that you can hold the technology together, right? So it's a very, it applies to a lot of things in life, right? Mm-hmm. Whenever you have whenever your equilibrium shifts, right, you basically increase one of the ingredients in order to basically cut loose to manage the shortage of the other ingredients. அதான்.
ஓகே ஓகே அண்ட் இங்கே டெக்கில் நம்ம எடுத்தோம்னா ஒரு பிஸ்னஸில் பீப்புள் ப்ராசஸ் டெக்னாலஜி
Yeah.
இதில் எதை ஒன்று சேஞ்ச் பண்ணாலும் ரெஸ்ட் ஆஃப் த
Yeah, so the easiest example is if your technology is bad, okay, you will throw more and more people in order to அதை பிடிச்சி வைக்கிறதுக்கு வந்து ஒரு 10 பேர் வைப்பீங்க. அந்த 10 பேர் ஒருத்தர் இன்னொருத்தரோட பேசின்னு இருக்கணும், அதெல்லாம் அந்த கம்யூனிகேஷன் மேனேஜ்மெண்ட்லாம் இருக்கிறதுக்கு ஒரு நிறைய ப்ராசஸ் போடுவீங்க. கடைசியில் you will stay alive because you have added more people and process because your technology is basically not doing the job.
சூப்பர் தேங்க்ஸ் ஃபார் ஸ்பெண்டிங் த லாஸ்ட் 2 hours
3 hours actually.
okay 3 hours answering all the questions. Thank you so much, Mohan.